So I told you at the beginning of this unit, this last unit, that we're trying to explore some of the fundamental questions of human life. What are we supposed to value? How are we supposed to live? What should our lives revolve around? Well, in our contemporary age, technology is everywhere. It forms a part of our daily lives, right? Everybody here has a laptop in front of them or a tablet. Everybody here has a phone in their pocket. The way that this university is run, the way that our society is run out there, it is all dependent on these forms of technology. So, an important question that we might ask ourselves is, what role should technology have in our lives? Should we only use some and not use others? How should we feel about this stuff? How should we feel about the internet and social media and all of this digital architecture and infrastructure that makes all of this possible? Well, that's the topic that we're going to be exploring today. And to do so, we're going to look at a very short essay written by this woman, Chellis Glendinning. Chellis Glendinning is an American author and activist. She's known for her neo-Luddite views, which we're going to be exploring today, as well as her stances on indigenous issues and indigenous rights, feminism, and things like that, as well as environmentalism, as we'll see. The reading that I asked you to look at today was just a very short essay that she penned decades ago, in which she's trying to tackle the question that I just asked you. What role should technology have in our lives? How should we feel about it? Well, Glendinning is going to be very critical of technology. She's going to try to argue that in some very important and fundamental ways, technology is making our lives worse. And so, in this day and age when technology threatens to become just more and more saturated into our lives, I think that this question is ultimately worth exploring, and one that you're going to need to reflect on, given that, well, it's only going to become more and more saturated into the societies in which we live in the Western world. What is technology? I've been throwing this word around. Does anybody have any idea? How might we define it? Anything that makes human lives easier. Yeah, I would say it would be something similar to that, right? When we think about technology, we think about like digital systems and computer systems, right? Like laptops and the internet and desktops and iPhones. But in a very rudimentary sense, you might say that a knife is a form of technology, right? Or a table. The wheel, when that was invented, that's a very important form of technology. Now, what Glendinning is going to argue is not that all technology is bad, but the kinds of technologies that we are having and utilizing today and that we're building the world upon are actually going to cause us a bunch of problems. They're causing us problems right now, and they're going to cause us problems in the future that we're going to have to deal with. So, if we define technology as, well, an artifact of human creation that makes our lives easier, she's going to encourage critical reflection on the technologies that will actually add to our lives and those that are actually going to detract from it. So hopefully we can make that distinction today as well. Now, to just give you a little bit of background, this view that Glendinning is going to be arguing for is one that is a little bit older than you might expect. we can consider Glendinning to be a neo-Luddite. What that means is that her philosophy or her worldview is based on that of Luddism. If you didn't know about this movement, this school of thought, the Luddites formed a group that were trying to, fight back against the saturation of technology into their workplace. They were trying to advocate for safer and better working conditions in the 19th century. A lot of them were textile workers who thought that their jobs were threatened by these new technologies that were going to come out and basically put them out of a job. And so they had some very strong views about these new forms of technology that would revolutionize how textiles were produced during this time of industrialization. In their attempts to fight back, they raised awareness about these forms of technology. They destroyed many forms of technology. Ultimately, they were trying to, I think, protect the lives of themselves and their family members who depended upon them to make a living wage. This movement also questioned whether or not laissez-faire capitalism was actually a good thing for people. Why? Well, one of the reasons is because they disagreed with the orientation of those who are engaged in capitalistic and entrepreneurial enterprise. Is money what life is all about? Is allowing trade and the market to be relatively free and people to make their own decisions about what to buy and sell and what to produce, is that ultimately a good thing? Is that making society better? Well, these are some of the questions that the Luddites and the Neo-Luddites were investigating. They did not like how, although this new system was producing a lot of wealth for people, that wealth was accumulating into the hands of fewer and fewer people. They saw this power, this status accumulating into fewer and fewer hands. And they questioned whether or not the individualistic aspect of the liberal worldview, of the capitalist economic system, whether or not that was actually going to sustain and promote human life, human needs, and actually look out for people. And so what we have pictured here is from a famous cartoon on the left of the poster boy of Luddism, who is said to have been Ned Ludd. We're not entirely sure if this Ned Ludd guy actually existed or if he was something like a mythological figure that was invented by these people, a symbol to rally around. Nevertheless, Glendinning is a Neo-Luddite, so she's going to share a lot of these views here. She's going to question the value of technology, the place that it has in our lives, whether or not it's actually promoting and safeguarding people's interests, making us wiser, stronger, kinder, etc. So does anybody have any questions so far? Okay, well then we're going to keep on going. In contrast to the kind of technological systems that we have today, which are rather individualized, which again promote this individualism, people can kind of do what they want, buy what they want, sell what they want, produce what they want. There's also a sense in the society that we live in today that whether or not you make it or succeed, well, that's on you. You got to work hard. You got to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. The Neo-Luddites are opposed to some of the views and presuppositions that inform the ideas that I just brought up. They would support older, more collectivistic, decentralized systems what you might think of as something like a commune, for instance, where people are living together and helping one another out, working for the collective good. Their priority is on meeting human needs, on promoting human life and interests, protecting family and community, making sure everybody gets what they need, rather than these modern individualistic capitalist systems that we have today. Along with this, they would advocate for kind of a more primitive lifestyle, one that is more connected to nature, one that is spending less time on our phones, on our laptops, one that finds contentment, perhaps, in a beautiful sunrise or an insect on a leaf, rather than laughing at the 15th cat video that you've seen today. The Luddites were concerned not only with the loss of their jobs, but also the future of humanity because of the saturation of technology that they thought was coming down the pipe. This saturation of technology into the economic sphere, into the market, was something that they thought was very threatening, that threatened their way of life, that threatened to change not only domestic affairs, but international affairs. They were worried that once machines were brought into their jobs, well, it's likely that these technologies would be brought into other jobs as well. That might put people out of jobs, as we talked about before. It might further alienate people from their work, from the products of their labor. These were all concerns that they were having while they were trying to fight back against this, what we now see as an inevitable saturation of technology into how things are produced and to how things are made. And so we could define the kind of philosophy or worldview that Glendinning is going to be advocating for today as either Luddism or Neo-Luddism, depending on how much we think she is trying to oppose technology here. You might say somebody who is a Luddite is somebody who is opposing almost all forms of technology. They think they're bad. They're not interested in having those saturate human life. They think they're going to make things worse. The Neo-Luddites take a little bit less of an intense view. They might say rather, look, there are a lot of technologies that are making things worse, but it's not all bad, you know. Maybe running water and electricity is good, but nuclear bombs are not good. The internet is not good. Social media is not good. So the Luddites and the Neo-Luddites are going to have differing views on which technologies we should do away with and which ones we should support. It's going to come down to, well, their personal beliefs and inclinations. In any case, they're trying to point out a problem. The Neo-Luddites today are trying to make us aware that although technology has given us a lot of opportunity and it has produced a lot of wealth, it has also had all of these other effects on our lives and how we think that we probably do not realize, but which it's worth to look at and investigate. And so Glendinning says, just as recent social movements have challenged the idea that current models of gender roles, economic organizations, and family structures are necessarily normal or natural, so the Neo-Luddite movement has come to acknowledge that the technological progress and the kinds of technologies produced in our society are not simply the way things are. As philosopher Lewis Mumford pointed out, technology consists of more than machines. It includes techniques of operation and the social organizations that make a particular machine workable. So she's working with a broader definition of technology here. It doesn't just mean machines, it doesn't just mean computers, but the techniques that we employ in our production processes and the organizations and the institutions that make our way of life possible. In essence, a technology reflects a worldview. Which particular forms of technology, machines, techniques, and social organizations, are spawned by a particular worldview depend on its perception of life, death, human potential, and the relationship of humans to one another and to nature. In contrast to the worldviews of a majority of cultures around the world, especially those of indigenous people, the view that lies at the foundation of modern technological society encourages a mechanistic approach to life, to rational thinking, efficiency, utilitarianism, and scientific detachment, as well as the belief that the human place in nature is one of ownership and supremacy. The kinds of technologies that result include nuclear power plants, laser beams, and satellites. This worldview has created and promoted the military, industrial, scientific media complex, multinational corporations, and urban sprawl. Stopping the destruction brought by such technologies requires not just regulating or eliminating individual items like pesticides or nuclear weapons. It requires new ways of thinking about humanity and new ways of relating to life. It requires the creation of a new worldview. So, what kind of worldview are we kind of conditioned into in Western society? Well, she gives us a few different characteristics there, right? What is the worldview of modern technological society? It's mechanistic. What are you supposed to do in your job? You follow a predefined technique, a predetermined technique to get something done or answer a question or fulfill a work order, right? Following the rules, following the book. Nature is seen kind of as being mechanistic. And this is an outgrowth of the Enlightenment and the scientific revolution, in which philosophers put forth the view that is still kind of accepted today, that the universe operates according to certain underlying principles and natural laws, in which everything is causally connected with everything else, kind of like a giant clockwork machine, right? The human person is even being seen through that lens, according to modern science. What we are is an amalgamation of atoms and energy arranged in a certain way, following certain chemical, biological, and physical laws. What else? Well, there's a prioritization of rational thinking, right? What do people tell you how do they tell you to behave in life? Oh, be rational, think rationally. Emotion is put down, intuition is set aside. There's an insistence on efficiency, right? And you live according to this mode of being as well. Don't you feel guilty if you don't get work done? If you're not productive? If you're not efficient with your time? Right, so you've taken that on. She also says that the way we're conceiving of and doing things is utilitarian. We are detached from the stuff of our study and observation. And the way that we are treating nature and thinking of it is, well, it is a means to our own ends. As we chop down forests in order to create cattle grazing land, or we pollute the oceans because we need to have the latest and greatest new iPhone. So what Glendinning is going to push here for is not just a critique of the technologies that we have and use, but of the way that we're looking at and approaching life. It's not just that, perhaps laptops are bad. It's, oh my goodness, with laptops and with nuclear weapons and all of this stuff comes a certain worldview that is detrimental to us. And we need to reflect on that. We need to question that. Our lives are filled with technology. And new technologies are coming out every day, right? We have laptops, cell phones, computers, projectors, video game consoles, recording and production software. And even more than that, we have all these machines, right, in factories, machines that we use in our jobs. There are certain techniques that we employ and that companies and corporations employ for mass production and to promote mass consumption. What we have seen since the advent of the first forms of technology thousands of years ago is that technology has just become more and more a part of our lives and our society. First it was the plow and the knife and the wheel. Now it is the transistor and the bomb and the cell phone. Right? And we still are using all those rudimentary forms of technology that we had at the beginning, right? So, our social and economic development have evolved due to all of these technological advancements, all of these forms of technology becoming more and more commonplace in how we think about things and how we think about what is possible and in how we do things. But Glendinning thinks that we take this for granted. We take this for granted not only to the earth's detriment, but also to our own detriment. Which is why she argues that modern forms of technology are, quote, out of control and desecrating the fragile fabric of life on earth. Again, she's not just talking about machines, but she's talking about those processes and those techniques that, undergird our Western way of life. And so what are those processes and those techniques? Well, we've talked about some of them already, right? Our system runs on what is called fossil fuels, right? And so we have to get those from the natural environment so that we can use them as an energy resource. Our running electricity is dependent on that stuff. We cultivate natural gas from the environment and we use that in our cooking and in other methods. These ways of engaging with nature, how we are cultivating resources from the environment, how much of the resources we're cultivating, how much we're using. This has all slowly evolved over the last few centuries, spurred on by the Industrial Revolution, spurred on by major technological advancements in the sciences and in engineering and in computing. The invention of the transistor was incredibly important. And now what Glendinning and the other Neo-Luddites are going to say we're doing is, we're basically engaged in all of these ways of life that aren't fulfilling us. We engage in mass production and consumption as a species. which isn't doing us any good, and it's producing a lot of waste. Do you need the next new item of clothing? Do you need the next new laptop or iPhone? What kind of impact is that having on the environment? Well, the Neo-Luddites are going to say, it's bad. We're kind of destroying it because people want to make money. And she would disagree with the whole frame. She would say, these pieces of technology don't matter, and they're not really making our lives better. Money doesn't really matter. That's not going to make our lives better either. Although the system that we've constructed for ourselves is one in which it's important. And so she's going to say, when you look at the techniques that we're employing, the institutions and organizations that we are supporting, the artifacts, the pieces of technology that we have and are using, this stuff is holding us back in some very real ways, and it's making things worse. They're going to question that this way of looking at the world, this kind of worldview that we've been conditioned into, is actually valuable and useful. Don't stress yourself out if you're not the most efficient studier, okay? They would say. You don't have to be rational all the time. Perhaps some of the best things in human life are non-rational or irrational. Is a beautiful sunset rational? Is making a memory with your best friend something a cold calculating machine would do? And so along with the environmental degradation that I already noted, the production of waste, they're also going to lay at the feet of technology and these processes and institutions a bunch of problems. Rising inequality, real existential risks such as bioweapons and artificial intelligence and nuclear bombs. They think that technology is contributing towards us feeling more and more alone and isolated. Do you spend a lot of time on your phone? And you're connected to more people than you ever could be before, right? On Facebook, on Instagram, Twitter, whatever it is. Do you think those are genuine connections that make you feel happy and secure? Are they fulfilling? Glendinning would say probably not, right? We're connected to more people now than ever through social media, through these platforms, but we feel more alone than ever. Our ancestors used to live more in community with one another. Even just decades ago, right? Perhaps family gatherings were more regular and more impactful or more important than they are today. And if we go further back, our ancestors lived together in a clan or a tribe, in a place together where they would help one another, where they would love on each other and talk to each other. But what kind of lives do we live now? Well, we're rather isolated. We live in our concrete box. Alone, we drive to school or work in our metal box. We spend our day looking at boxes, being engrossed by technological boxes. I think she would look around at the world today and argue that people are being sucked in to a way of life that is, well, it's taking advantage of their biological systems, right? Giving them these hits of neurotransmitters that are keeping them addicted to these things. I think she would say if you look at social media and you look at these websites, it's not connecting people. It's not making people feel nice. What is it doing? It's creating echo chambers. It's promoting parasocial relationships, which are unhealthy, obsessions. Along with all of the other problems she thinks that technology has brought about. But those aren't the only effects. We can get a little bit more specific on the kinds of problems that we're suffering today as a result of, well, how we are doing things, how we are thinking about things, how technology is a part of our lives. How are people doing health-wise? Let's say in the U.S. Are we pretty healthy? Or not? Nod your head yes if we're healthy. Shake your head no if we're not healthy. We used to be healthier decades ago. Maybe we didn't have exactly the same life expectancy, because we do have amazing medical technology, right? And I think Glendinning would say, hey, that's really cool that we can save people's lives. But look around at the kinds of very real ways that people are suffering as a result of these systems, as a result of what is being produced. We have a ton of things to worry about with respect to human health. We have to worry about biowarfare perhaps in the future. There are labs around the world that are doing research into modifying strains of bacteria and viruses for scientific knowledge, probably. But if there's money to be made in it, somebody will probably use that for nefarious ends, right? We could talk about processed foods. We could talk about the farming practices that we are engaging in on a mass scale that is depleting the soil in various places of nutrients, vitamins, and minerals. We could talk about artificial dyes and all these chemicals that are being put into our food that we know, for example, are correlated with diseases like cancer. We could talk about how in the U.S., for instance, we live very sedentary lives, which is having an impact on our health, right? I don't know about you, but I spend a lot of time sitting, and that is not good. We should be exercising more, moving more. Addictions plague society. Drugs, alcohol, social media, attention. I know y'all probably don't have the best sleep schedules, right? What do you think that is doing to your health? So in that sphere alone, Glendinning would say, there are a lot of problems that we have to deal with that, well, are downstream of how we are organizing things and the technologies that we're using. We could speak about our society politically or socially. We are more politically polarized than we ever have been. Why? Well, in part because Social media does a great job of driving people into echo chambers that confirm their views, does a great job of giving them only certain bits of information, which will, of course, fire them up and get them to be antagonistic to people who think that they are their political opponents, right? Nobody's being given the full picture. We have all these groups in American society, for instance, that are at each other's throats, that see each other as the enemy, that want to hurt and do violence to each other. There's a lack of social cohesion and trust. We spoke a little bit about this when we discussed Hobbes's views, but would you trust the average person on the street to borrow your phone and give it back? Probably not, right? If we're going to follow the Rousseauian line of thought and dig deep into when perhaps our issues began, the way that we've organized our society is in such a way that now we are required to work for a living rather than, well, gather resources and cultivate roots and berries and food from the land. Maybe you think that's an upgrade, or maybe like Rousseau, in some ways you think that's a regression. That's a bad thing. Being enslaved to this kind of way of life. And all of this is enough to, well, impel some of our political leaders and representatives to set up new institutions and new laws that threaten to dissolve some of our freedoms as Americans. So with regards to individual health, with regards to social health, there are some issues that our forms of technology are exacerbating. Likewise, for the planet that we live on. And we've already talked about this. But there's pollution, there's chemical runoff. In the health category, we could also discuss, in relation to this one, pesticides and herbicides. Right? Make sure to wash your fruits and vegetables and your rice. Okay. Forest fires that we have to deal with. Some people think that the sea level is rising. In lots of places there is decreased biodiversity, species extinction. And this stuff is being exacerbated by our production and our consumption practices. By our mass farming practices, which is only made possible through the forms of technology that we have today and that we and farmers and our world leaders and our corporations are utilizing. We are not going to watch that. In any case, they're going to say, look, technology isn't inherently bad, but it's being used for all of these bad things. The way that we are using it is bad. We don't have the proper conceptions of it. And we're using them unwisely. So, as far as Glendinning is concerned, we should reject a lot of modern forms of technology. And the prioritization of technology in our individual and social lives. Not because, again, it is an evil, but because it's not really serving us in the way that we want it to. The internet can be used to great effect. I mean, you have the entire history of, well, I shouldn't say history. You have the entirety of human knowledge that we have right now, or almost all of it, at your fingertips. But what do we use the internet for? Watching videos on Instagram, shit posting on Reddit, right? We don't use it to learn and grow. We use it to attack each other, to dig ourselves deeper into our beliefs. We use it to insult other people. We use it to make ourselves feel bad, right? When we're looking at people's lives on these social media platforms and we're comparing them with ourselves and we're like, I wish I had a body like that. I wish I had money like that. I suck. I'm the worst, right? Are these technologies that you're using serving you? That is the question the Neo-Luddites are going to push you to ask, to reflect on. And they're going to say that these forms of technology have really saturated every sphere of our lives. For instance, in order to get a job, you need to have these technologies and you need to rely on them and use them. You can't get a job without an email address. You can't do your schoolwork without a computer. You can't get to work or campus without a car. Maybe some of you can. Maybe you can bike or something. But even that is a form of technology, right? And so city planning, jobs, just living and moving and operating in our daily life, all of these things require and depend on certain forms of technology. And they're going to say that technology engenders a certain attitude towards life and the environment. And technology sets up a certain political way of life and a certain social way of life. All in all, she thinks that the cons outweigh the pros, at least in regards to how we are using these technologies. Hypothetically speaking, we could use these technologies to make the world a better place, to make people more equal, to solve problems like hunger and disease. But instead, what people are using them for is to create division, to make money, to look out for number one, to do damage to what's out there. So, the kinds of technologies that you use in your lives and how deeply saturated they are into your way of thinking and being is what the Luddites are going to encourage you to reflect on. Because again, this is something that we often take for granted. We don't really think about this stuff. Perhaps it's not something that you've thought really hard about before. But maybe this class today, this lecture today, has pushed you in that direction. And so near the end of this piece, what Glendinning does is she offers us kind of a sketch, kind of a potential guide for the future of how we might change things, how we might make things better, how we might improve our own lives. She says, if we want to save ourselves from some of these problems, if we want to make our lives healthier and happier, we need to get rid of a lot of this stuff. We need to stop using it individually, but collectively we need to dismantle a lot of things. Such as nuclear technology, chemical technology, television, electromagnetic forms of technology, computer technologies, those technologies that are being used right now in genetic research. We should stop doing that. We should put that away. because that is going to open up a Pandora's box. Just imagine if we figured out how to, genetically engineer people to get rid of disease or disability or make people faster or stronger or smarter. Geez, what a whole host of questions and problems to have to deal with, right? Who's going to get access to that technology first? The rich people. Inequality is going to get worse because the rich people are going to make their kids the best and they'll outcompete everybody else. And then we'll have to, maybe we'll have to deal with super strong criminals and then super strong police to battle the super strong criminals. And that's just, again, a Pandora's box. So genetic technology, lots of questions there. Computer technologies. Making a lot of this possible, right? These mass production and consumption processes. Inciting, or perhaps inciting is not the right word, causing in people addictions and kind of propelling them on unhealthy life paths, right? These phones, these computers, television. So really she's encouraging a kind of a return to a more primitive lifestyle. She doesn't think we need to get rid of technology forever. She doesn't think it's all bad. She doesn't think it's inherently bad. Hypothetically speaking, we can and should use those technologies that are actually going to make human life better. For example, the bowl. Pretty good piece of technology, right? That makes human life better. Maybe we keep that. Running water. Seems pretty good. Seems pretty cool. Maybe we keep that. Maybe we keep those rudimentary forms of technology that allow us to farm better and harvest and till the soil better. And maybe we keep saws and knives and things like that. Perhaps bicycles. But this other stuff, this more advanced stuff, is that really doing us a lot of good? Well, that's something that you're going to have to reflect on. She doesn't think so. She thinks that it's clear that if you look at how human life has been going for the past few decades and how it's going now, we're headed down some bad paths here by leaning into these things. Because it would seem we have neither the wisdom nor the virtue to wield them correctly. And so she encourages at the end of this piece, living more in tune with nature. Not living such an artificial lifestyle, but participating in permaculture, in integrating our houses or living spaces in with natural life forms like trees and vines and things like that. Not just paving the natural environment away and building what we want on top of it, but working with it. Building alongside it, respecting it. Utilizing those forms of technology that are actually going to help us establish positive relationships, strong communities, and which encourage responsibility, not only over our own lives, but over the lives of others and over the environment as well. So I think she would encourage kind of a move away from mass-scale industrial society to more decentralized, local, independent communities and communes. Not only would this be good, perhaps, she thinks, for, the soil and the land, but also the health of the plants and fruits that we might grow, vegetables. It would be better for the environment. It would be more community focused and centered. And perhaps not so many people would fall through the cracks like we have in our large-scale industrial societies. Because as it stands right now, she doesn't think that the technology is helping us grow and develop, really. We're using it for entertainment. We're using it as a distraction, but we're not actually using it to strengthen our own capacities, our own knowledge, our own wisdom or virtue. She would like to see a society emerge in which we feel safe expressing our opinions honestly, where we actually are in dialogue with others, where we engage in creative expression. Without that stuff, it doesn't seem like we're going to be able to live a very fulfilling life in the kinds of systems that we have right now. The happiness and fulfillment that we're searching for, that we're pursuing, it might require us to kind of distance ourselves from these systems and technologies. So, what do you think about what Glendinning has to say here? You think she's right? You think she's wrong? What popped up for you during the lecture? Yeah.
One of the things that I mentioned was about like addictions, and I feel like we're almost too far gone in that aspect. I feel like we're already too addicted and dependent on the forms of technology that we have right now, and it would, like, I think there's no way we'd be able to like go back on it now.
You think so? Okay, what are we addicted to?
Computers, phones, like corporate businesses that use like massive data systems to kind of store their information instead of like old-fashioned paper and
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Okay, so you think there's social media addiction?
Mm-hmm.
Phone addiction? How much time do you all spend on your phones every day? Do you have the little notification that tells you at the end of the week the average amount of time you spent on your phone? How bad is it? Is it really bad? During spring break, you want to know how much time I spent on my phone a day? 7 hours. Isn't that insane? Now, granted, a lot of that was just listening to something as I'm trying to fall asleep at night. But still, that's crazy. I have been sucked into it too. The teachers and the other administrators here, the other adults in your lives, they've been sucked into it too, haven't they? Whether it's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, whatever. Okay, so there's that. Anything else? What else do y'all think about her analysis and her argumentation here? Yeah.
I just don't know where we would go moving forward because a lot of like people say that like we spend much time with all technology, but like where we're at now, it's very like hard to stay away from that once we're gonna like pen and paper stuff.
Right.
I think we can acknowledge that technology has advanced and it's much better than what it used to be, but like how do we like restrict what is like our daily basis of what our norm is?
Yeah. I mean, the fact of the matter is, we can't really succeed in this system unless we participate in it, right? And use the technology. So if you want to get a job, you need an email, you need a phone, you need to have gotten an education. In order to get an education, you had to use all this stuff and know how to use all these apps and programs and software. You can individually cut down on your own technology usage, right? How much time you spend on these apps, how much TV you watch. But short of doing a lot of work and research to become self-sufficient and then actually making that move, you're not going to ultimately be able to leave this system, right? Which, I mean, depending on how you view it, can be a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, I love my coffee. I love my YouTube lectures. I like being able to look up anything when I want, But by being conditioned into this kind of way of life, there are certain skills that we have and certain knowledge and skills that we don't, right? And it's going to be that way for any way our society is organized. In the past, people knew how to start fires and grow food and hunt and skin animals. And today, what do we know how to do? We know how to work the Roku. We know how to drive a car. Right? Okay, anything else? Any other thoughts? Feelings, concerns? Yeah?
I agree with what she's saying about using technology instead to better the environment, but again, I do feel like how everyone else is kind of saying, it's very hard to just stop using technology because we kind of have to. So I think it does just kind of come down to your own personal times that you spend on Instagram, TikTok, things like that. Just I don't know, controlling yourself more on how much you're using it. Maybe put your phone down and go outside or do something.
So you're a little bit sympathetic to what she's saying in regards to maybe this stuff isn't making everybody's lives better. Or would you disagree with that?
I would say it depends on the situation. I feel like it
depends on how you use it.
Yeah, it depends on how you use it, because I feel like certain things with technology, it is making everyone's lives better, but then other things, it contrasts.
Yeah, right, we could draw up a whole list of pros and cons. Again, we have some awesome medical technology, right? We can make stuff quickly and we can make a lot of it. Industrialization has greatly raised the standard of living in the West too. Look at all the stuff that we have that our grandparents could only dream of having. Look at what is possible for us, the opportunities that we have. Yet, at the same time, if we are addicted to our phones or the TV or other screens, if we are becoming more resentful and angrier and more anxious and concerned, well, we'll have to weigh all that, right? I'm not sure which way of life would be better. All I have known is the kind of way of life that, we have now, where we do have all these systems and things and opportunities, and yeah.
I think very valid in what she's discussing as well. I feel like you have control on whatever your actions create. That's in anything. You can be addicted to anything. Take the precautions to not be addicted. Yes, without technology, we wouldn't have the medicine we have today, or the cures, or NASA, or anything like that. So I feel like you can blame technology for the actions, but honestly, it's blame yourself for the actions, not technology.
Yeah, technology is making a lot of this stuff possible, but whether or not, your life is going the way that you want it to go is, well, that's going to be dependent on how you think and act, right, too. It's not as if, the technology monster is coming in and making you, all sad and mad and unhealthy. Yeah, so that's a good point. What about this AI thing? That's scary. How do the rest of y'all feel about it? Yeah.
I'm in the AI and computer literacy class, so all this semester, all I've done is that AI has been my life.
Okay, so can you tell us about it a little bit? What have you learned?
So I just did a multi-week project on AI, and I did more teacher-based things because I'm in English education, so technically AI is seen as a threat to both my fields. So I wanted to see if it actually is a threat, and if it will actually take my job, or if I could even use it as a tool in my future job.
Yeah.
And my peers did others with their specific career background, and I feel what we've all decided is how actually dumb AI is. How, wrong answers it gives you, and it's actually so misleading, but people use it to make their lives easier, but they're technically not making their lives easier because they're learning wrong information or using wrong information.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen instances where ChatGPT, for instance, has generated fake citations,
I mean, technically there are ways you can use it as a tool, but it would take more time to use it as a tool than it would be to actually, go do it, if that makes sense. If I used AI to help me write an email, which the email that I did get from it was pretty good, but then I gotta go in and make all the personal notes in it.
Yeah.
So then that's gonna take more time. And then there's also something called prompt engineering, which is asking AI to do something, push it to its limits basically, because the prompts we're doing now aren't the best. And I spent a lot of time prompt engineering, and that takes a lot of time, redoing the prompts, seeing what prompt is best. So I just think time-wise, people think it's efficient, but in all actuality, it's not efficient.
Right now.
Right now.
What do you think is going to happen in the future?
I think it is going to get to a point it's more efficient, and it could get correct information, but at the same time, it lacks the human emotional aspect. So I don't know if it will ever gain that because of all the actual technology we have. It lacks the human connection and human emotion. So. And the biases also too, that could get into a whole other thing, how AI can be biased.
Right, because of the human programmers that feed into it and the data sets that they're consuming. Yeah, I mean, I think the general attitude that people have is this is going to become a larger part of our way of life, of our economic systems, of all kinds of spheres of life. There are some people who are really worried about it. There are some people who think that AI is going to be able to solve all of our social and economic problems. I'm not sure what you believe about that, but it's something worth considering. Should it become more and more a part of how we do things or not? That's something that you should reflect on, because whether you're voting with your wallet or actually voting in the polls, you are going to have some sort of impact and influence on how that's going to turn out.
I was just going to say, I found it really interesting when you and Tim were talking about the idea of the engineer's bias, because a lot of people are, this is my opinion, but a lot of people are acting like AI is some sort of independent entity that's either way dumber than people or high and mightier above people. But in my mind, it's just an extension of humanity. If people have biases and stupid ideas or smart ideas, then the AI is going to reflect that. So I don't think it's going to save the world unless the people are already capable of saving the world themselves.
Okay. Do you have any idea of what's likely to happen?
I think what's probably going to happen is
technologies where it automates a bunch of stuff for people, people forget how to do that stuff, and now we're overly reliant on it and we can't do it ourselves.
That seems to be the way things are heading. I can't tell you how many AI-written essays I have to grade every week. And although it's easy, if you rely on it too much, you will not learn to write well. I'm telling you that right now. So you should learn how to write for your own sake and for other people's sake. And for my sanity, please, for the love of God. Okay, any other final questions, concerns, comments? Otherwise, I'll let you all go here. Okay. All right, well, thank you very much. I hope you found this interesting. I will see you on Thursday.
No sign machine.
Have a good day. It should be around here somewhere.